This is a video by Dana Hatchett about optical movement with circles.
This series I began several years ago when I was teaching design. And when I was teaching design, I gave them, I wanted a black and white exercise that allowed them to start to build up a kind of conglomeration of surfaces on the page. So I used the circle, okay? Now let's look at what a circle does and what a circle is, okay? This is a simple circle template that you can get at a stationery store or something of that nature, okay? Now, a circle is a very powerful form in terms of optical movement. Because as I've mentioned in an earlier video, we have two eyes. And we have something called stereoscopic vision, okay? And with the two eyes and the stereoscopic vision, when you have two things put down, they will tend to start relating to one another, okay? Now, one way to increase their relatedness is to come through here and drop a line underneath, and it connects them, okay? I've discovered these things by, I broke my pencil. I've discovered these things by trial and error, okay? Now, in this case, when I look at this form, the two circles start to pull together because it's a natural way that we have in our thinking to bring what the two eyes have together, okay? And a lot of art forms have been based on this idea, bringing them together. I don't know if you can see that optical movement, but in time you will. I find this one of the easier ways to see the kind of the utilization of two eyes and working with that structure, okay? Now, I will return to that in a few minutes here, okay? It has a sound, this has a sound basis in design and in the way the mind functions, okay? In this case, I made a lot of circles of similar shapes with a punch. I used to have the students draw them out and then trim them out, and they were always kind of a little bit ragged, okay? But in this case, this builds up a surface, a layering of white and black circles. I had white circles so I could blank out some of the black circles and start building up a surface, okay? Here's an example that took that to a little more complicated level with some color, okay? Kind of like, there's something in the center of this, or in the central area of this page that has a kind of ragged organic edge, kind of like leaves on a sidewalk, or petals, or what are the round? I'm drawing a blank. The round petals that are floating on a pond, like lily pads. So in nature, this kind of organization is very reasonable and very understandable. Clouds use these kind of patterns as well, okay? Now over here, I built it up further. I think I put the white shapes down, and then the gray shapes, and then the kind of light green shapes, until it started to build up a kind of concretation of the forms. Now that's one way to approach a composition based utilizing circles. Here I'm starting to control it a little more. And for me at least, it's like smoke. When I look at it, all of them, because they're all the same shapes, and they're kind of balanced. There's a kind of variation in the values here. And then if you look at it, it's a very easy shape to look at. Maybe a little easier than the triangles, the triangle forms. And for me, it starts to, in the kind of organic nature of how things happen in the world, in the natural world, leaves, trees, various forms in nature build up like cells or smoke to a surface.
I have a question, Dana.
Yeah.
Why is the circle at the bottom bigger?
I wanted a focal point.
Okay.
The larger circle became the point at which I could start to build up the other forms and have them relate to one another. Otherwise, the tendency would be that they would relate just to the field of lots of little spots, okay? Now here's another example of creating with this concept. kind of like the smoke concept or the concept of natural forms in the world, okay? Now, when I look at this, these things move around quite a bit because there's nothing restricting them. They're not held down in any way. In this particular composition here, the only thing holding them down is the bottom of the page and the larger circle, but that allows them to have a kind of relatedness to one another and create composition.
Suggests movement.
Suggests movement, yes. Now, in this case, there's a long tradition of artists that have utilized simple geometric forms. Okay, and in this case, for me, my visual apparatus is very sensitized to what happens between the various forms, meaning when I look at these, I see more circles than are actually out there physically. Okay, there's physical fact, and there's the kind of psychic phenomena. Not psychic in the sense of that's used now, but it's the way it's describing what happens in the mind and what that creates. When I look at this, it starts to become more than just the 6 white circles. They become a group of them because my eyes are going back and forth and creating this motion. And it's a very easy, smooth, very, very reasonable motion.
Well, how would people do that?
By practicing with the circles. This, I think, is one of the easier ways in which a person can see optical movement. The triangle patterns that I was using, and I love those a great deal, they rely on the structure of the page in linear rows so that they use that crossing back and forth in a structured sense. This is like smoke, like nature, okay? Here's another one, okay? Now, because the white, there's more white circles than there are pink circles against the black. It's a kind of a unified composition, a figure and a ground. This stuff in here is balanced with this stuff out here. And these forms here are balanced against all 3 forms. This is the rectangle, the white circles, and the pink circles.
So you perceive the movement through the interaction of
You perceive the movement because they're not nailed down in any way. They're moving. They're optically moving. And again, as I've said before, the way to see that optical movement is to not look so intently. Meaning, do not look at this circle or this circle or this circle. Let your eyes relax and see the white space around it so that they start to move around in the center there. Is that a possibility? Can anybody see that? Okay. It's a kind of the same principle, Debbie, that is in this one. The 2 penciled in, drawn circles, because they've got a white line beneath them to tell them where they're going, move towards one another, like a lens, 2 lenses that you're looking through. Okay? And this becomes more apparent the more of these you do. Okay? In this case, I had another element of variety and variation, the little black circles. The little black circles kind of lock this in so that it grows kind of like the field of circles that are here all over the place, okay? Or here, controlled with a kind of a kind of focal point with a larger circle down below. And here in that they're kind of centralized, all like forms in nature, okay? Right. So these utilize, so one thing leads into another. When you're learning to work with visual variables, you want to realize that it has a lot to do with just being aware of what's in front of you and having a childlike curiosity and to kind of keep layering the circles down, okay? Now here's a more advanced circular composition, utilizing pink circles as the background area, black circles that kind of break into the black frame around it, and blue circles. And then the highlight would be that kind of light blue or cerulean blue circle, okay? So it all moves around and kind of creates a kind of dynamism, okay? Now I want to show you something here, okay? Okay, I want to show you something here. Here is a composition I did because I just keep playing with them because I think they're fun to work with. Here, the only difference is I kind of broke that one off, okay? Now I cut these out with a punch now. They aren't made with a little plastic grid. When I place this over them in a certain
Can you
configuration.
show what you placed over again? Okay.
This,
Punched out piece.
Punched out pieces. Now the shape, the black shape, creates the overall visual field, the figure in the ground. And the playfulness of these other forms are forced to fit in there, but our mind knows they're circles.
Can you show us what's behind it again? And then put it back on.
Let's take a look
Okay,
here.
so
Okay.
there's the circles, and then there's the next layer. Put the next layer on.
And here's the next layer. To kind of open up the composition and give it structure. As I've said in other cases, we can't look at anything without trying to make sense of it.